Welcome, everybody, back to Lunch and Learn here at the Museum of American Finance. Hi, I'm David Cowan, President, and we today welcome an old friend, Ken Winans, and his wife, Debbie, to the museum. Excuse me. Ken has his own investment firm, and he combines something we really appreciate around here, which is financial history, into his philosophy about investing and portfolio management. Ken is a regular on Forbes.com. You can find his writings there, as well as other magazines, newspapers, websites, but none more important than the multiple articles he's written for our own magazine, Financial History. Ken is the author of 4 books. His latest is this, Investment Atlas 2. And if you'd be so inclined to purchase it, Ken would be happy to autograph it for you afterwards. Now, I have 4 fun Ken facts for you today. The first one, are you aware that he started his own museum, the Space Station Museum? So if you find yourself in the San Francisco area, please do check that out. Secondly, be aware, Winans is a storied name in New Jersey. It's one of the founding families. The hometown I grew up in has a Winans Street named after it. The hometown of Kristen Aguilera, our deputy director, has the name Winans. And every day I go back and forth, I pass Winans Avenue on the highway. So be aware of that fact about him. And third, he hosted his own radio show on investing. But lastly, and of course, most importantly, he was a trustee at one point here at the Museum of American Finance. You can find out more about Ken at www.kenwinans.com. But now he's going to take on the role of a professor because he's going to teach today about what they do not teach at Harvard with history as an investment tool. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the museum Ken Winans.
I will not touch the mic. I'll lift it up just a little bit. Okay. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, good. By the way, a little higher. How's that, sir? Oh. How's that? Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you for all coming out here today. It was so funny. I was telling Kristen the last time I gave a talk on investment history, actually I think it was in this room, was October of 2008. So I'm glad you folks brought me back on a nice high point, bull market hitting record highs, and I don't have to be Dr. Doom. So we don't like that. This institution is very special to me and my wife, Debbie. With our foundation, there's 2 areas. Obviously, space exploration is one of them, but the other part is financial history. And this is truly the only institution anywhere in our country that thinks that the history of finance and investing is important and that we can all use it to hopefully protect ourselves and maybe make a few bucks here and there. So as we go into this talk today, I wanted to start off on a couple of reasons why I feel the way I do. I have an MBA in finance. I was going through the CFA accreditation program back in the late 80s and thought I had wonderful professors. I had all the modern theories in finance, and then boom, here comes the '87 stock market crash. Wasn't supposed to happen. None of that was supposed to happen. But yet, as I went through thinking about, wait a minute, how come all these brilliant professors I had and all the people on Wall Street didn't bring up the term panics? It wasn't until I started doing my own search through history that I realized, wow, this kind of thing had happened before, and for some strange reason, they didn't teach it in MBA programs then, and sadly, don't teach it today, at least at Harvard. And by the way, I'm not just picking on Harvard. When I give this talk in California, I pick on Stanford as well. So I pick on any of the top 5 schools, I'm going to pick on you. But I literally downloaded the curriculum for Harvard as of right now, and I have actually gone as far as to buy the textbooks. By the way, has anybody here seen the price tag on textbooks lately? Whoa, I'm in the wrong business, I'll tell you. And my book at $55 is a bargain compared to what you pay for it. But sadly, I found that the material hadn't changed all that much. I'm 55 years old, and I found that, well, there's a little more talk now about the 1929 crash and all that, but as you can see, the word history cannot be found in the curriculum at all. And I'm a little unnerved by that. We're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about the simple fact we've had 2 50% corrections in the stock market, a massive housing bubble, God knows how many commodity bubbles that have burst just in this century alone. And many of you in this room remember 73, 74, and can remember certainly 87. So I do find it interesting that a lot of programs simply don't think financial history is important. I was honored that TD Ameritrade just featured us in their magazine. And this quote I wrote was very candid in how I honestly feel. I'm just find it a bit unnerved that we are not covering this at all. And yet, when you look at other disciplines, law school, anybody here a lawyer? How much case study history did you have in your law school? I bet most of it, right? Anybody here with a poli-sci degree? Political science? Oh, come on, raise your hand proudly. There we go. History, I bet, was a big part of it, wasn't it? Anybody here a veteran? Anybody go to the nation's military academies? 1/3 of the curriculum is about history. Yet, in most business schools across the country, they don't even offer it as an elective. So what I'm saying to you is that it's something that we should all be aware of, that those people who you might be turning to manage your money do not cover this, don't know it. If you brought up to them the 1907 rich man's panic, they would not know what you're even talking about. They might think it's a good bottle of wine, but we don't know. But anyway, that is something we are hopefully going to cover today. So let's talk about, can we accept the possibility that our ancestors are not a whole heck of a lot different than us? And I love this picture here. So here is 1962. This was actually on the cover of a Life magazine article. Here's the 1906, 1907 rich man's panic. Those faces, I think, say it all. Here's this poor man in 1857. He must have owned some real estate back then when things blew up. And of course, here's 1987. And many of us are, at least two of these photos are of our generation. But again, are we really that much different than in the past? And I don't think we are. In fact, as I've read books written 100 years ago by people who worked in the stock exchange, I find they're brilliant, they're fantastic statisticians. Charles Dow, a prime example of it. The man was ahead of his time on the advent of the index. These were not stupid people who stupidly went on margin in 1929 and blew themselves up. But that was a very hard thing to sell before 2007, because people just thought we were smarter. So now jumping ahead here, let's do a little quiz. You didn't think you were going to get away with a lunch here and not have to be involved. Okay, please read the phrase there, and then pick a year that you think that was written. Notice it was near tops, which is important. Okay, everybody read it? You have your dates picked? Okay. So how many here think it, let's start at the bottom, 2008. Anybody here think it was written? Okay, how about 1999? 72? Okay, 1929? Oh, you folks know your history. You're right, it is 1929, and I love this cartoon. Here, we could actually use it today. The bankers aren't lending money. Why aren't you guys lending money? Oh gosh, the ghosts of the past are haunting them. You could use it today. So the point being that it is funny how phrases, almost you could cut and paste things that were used in the past and put it into today's papers, and certainly on our websites. Okay, now, if you decide you want to study history outside of the fantastic bookstore that Alan runs here, and you get a wonderful selection of books, it's actually not easy to do. And I have a lot of interns that work with Mark and I in our company, and it's so funny because they just say, oh, it's on the web. You would all laugh. I've had these very smart young people, and they're all excited. They come back from the library and say, I learned how to use microfiche. They're all excited. They've microfilmed, microfiche, and in fact, some of them had really been in a public library. It's really quite sad. But they did learn that for some reason, a lot of the data on the internet, I don't know what's magical about March 1980, but if you try to get a lot of stock price data past that date, can't find it. It just doesn't exist. So I've literally have had to have some of these interns go and dig out the trading records and archives for the OTC and the New York Stock Exchange and make copies of it and actually manually, oh my gosh, should I use that word, manually enter data on a spreadsheet. So it's not all on the internet. That's one thing we have to realize.